Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today y Mañana. I'm Alex. This is Xavier. We're very excited to have you joining us on this brisk morning, but sunny morning here in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a great day to get into wherever you are most comfortable watching.
You almost
Today
had me
Mañana.
there because you went like this, and I thought, I'm supposed to say my name. I said, no, he always says my name.
I always say, just even though you forget.
I wasn't paying attention, so am I supposed to say something?
Well, now you can say, how you doing this morning?
How you doing, Alex? How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. You'd also remind people what they're supposed to do during the show today. We forgot that in the mic-only portion.
Like, share, and subscribe.
There you go. So be sure to do that. Send us any comments, questions you have. We're going to be joined by some fantastic guests in a moment. We're going to welcome Dr. Ed Castro and Kellee Kortas from Castro Integrative Medicine to the show this morning. So we're really excited about that. Later in the show, David and I will talk some finance. I know we'll talk a little things you can do, IRAs, Roth IRA changes, different, how much you can put in your 401k has changed. Little tips and tricks that we've thought of and that often come into play when we're sitting down with clients. So we'll have a little bit of that. Already got some great guests joining us. Monica Miller from Montana going to be watching the show this morning. Dr. Elizabeth Urpí watching the show this morning. So thank you both for joining us. So it's going to be fantastic. It's funny. We have kept the streak alive ever since Michael and I 3 weeks ago complained about UVA basketball on a losing streak. They have not lost. So
have they won any on the road though?
They won on the road. They did. They win one on the road.
That was their Achilles heel.
They did. So Michael and I, because I think it was a few weeks ago, we were sitting there saying, "Oh man, what would we do to add a little to the beginning of the show?" And we're like, we'll just talk a little UVA basketball. But of course, they had lost 3 in a row. So Michael and I are sitting there saying, "Well, to do better. We're struggling." And then since then, they haven't lost. So that's always a welcome reprieve. Of course, always like to thank our presenter, Emergent Financial Services, and our great partners, Matthias Realty, Craddock Serious Insurance, Tassel Hill Cider, Forward Adelante. And of course, thank all of you for tuning in this morning. So I don't know about you, but I'm excited to.
I'm excited.
Jump right in.
Me too. I just want to learn much more about this. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're excited to welcome to the show this morning Dr. Ed Castro, the founder, and Kellee Kortas, integrative health practitioner at Castro Integrative Medicine. Dr. Ed, Kellee, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Actually, we're allowed to say buenos dias, right?
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
Pleasure to see.
There you are. See.
Pleasure to see. In front of our Today Mañana. Have to do the bilingual every once in a while.
That's right.
So maybe to start, for those who haven't met you, maybe aren't familiar with Castro Integrative Medicine, maybe tell us a little bit about yourselves. Obviously, Dr. Ed, how you founded the institution, and then Kellee, how you came along.
All right. Well, integrative medicine, you could call it holistic medicine, you could call it alternative medicine. It's medicine that's not conventional medicine. Mm-hmm. So these are treatments that conventional doctors don't do.
Okay.
And so my treatments are not FDA approved. So that sounds bad. But the reason they're not FDA approved is because they're not patentable. So it takes hundreds of millions of dollars to get FDA approval. Absolutely. And so it doesn't matter how good a treatment is. It matters if it's patentable. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of treatments that are very natural, holistic, that promote health in an array of ways. They promote health. Conventional medicine, talking particularly about chronic illness, have drugs that help reduce symptoms. Mm-hmm. And that's one way to go about it. I think it's better to address the reason the person has symptoms, to promote the health and recover from the condition. So like a real obvious difference between conventional and like what we do is autoimmune disease. So in conventional medicine, if you have an autoimmune problem, and there are dozens of autoimmune diseases, basically your immune system is the problem, so you suppress your immune system to get symptomatic relief. And you do, but that's at the cost of suppressing your immune system probably for a lifetime. So there's some risk with that. What conventional doctors don't know, probably don't believe, is that there are treatments that improve immune functioning. Improve it, whether it's an autoimmune disease, whether the person has cancer, a chronic infection, or an acute infection. And so that's the kind of thing that we do. Okay. So we see a lot of chronic illness that's very common. Mold is common right now. Chronic Lyme is common. And we see a lot of autoimmune disease as well. We see other things. We see cancer. We don't treat cancer outright, but we support a person's immune system.
While they're seeking treatment.
Yeah. And the treatments actually help, if they're doing chemo or radiation, helps chemo radiation work better, and it protects them a little bit from it.
Which makes sense.
So oncologists don't know that, so they don't recommend it. But it's in the literature, it's in the medical literature.
And so how did you first become interested in this field and decide to start
I was a conventional doctor for 12 years. I was one of them. I was in conventional medicine. I thought the way they thought. I did what they did. And I stumbled into a treatment, neurofeedback. And I looked into it a little further, I decided, I think I'm going to do this, even though it was not FDA approved. And it opened up my eyes. It just blew the hinges off the door. Example is I was a psychiatrist. I was a conventional psychiatrist for those 12 years. And so an example of like what neurofeedback did is like a child with ADHD, I could prescribe Ritalin, and he could pay attention for a few hours. It didn't help anything else, and it did hurt some other things. Neurofeedback, basically, your brain regains its fine-tuning that it was designed to have. So this boy not only paid attention, he quit wetting the bed, his anxiety resolved, he got better at soccer. Basically, his brain was working the way it was designed to work. And so that got me like, what? There's a treatment like this, and I never heard of it? So I looked for other treatments, and I found some. Chelation was one. Hyperbaric oxygen was one. Anyway, so then lo and behold, there's a clinic in Southwest Virginia that has an international reputation, and the doctor at the clinic had an international reputation, and he was one of the experts in chelation. And so I went there and I said, would you train me? So he hired me. So I worked there for a while. So that's where I learned a lot of the treatments. And I acquired other treatments over time.
And Kellee, how about yourself? How did you first come to join the team? Or
I wouldn't leave him alone. I had kind of started my own business myself, taking on some patients, or they're supposed to be called clients when you're not under MD, and was enjoying that, but wanted to learn more, wanted to work with someone and be able to have that partnership and offer more opportunities to people for their healing. And so went to ask him what he did, loved it, and kind of kept showing up until they hired me.
No, it was serendipitous. My head nurse, Ashley, had been telling me for some time, you need to give patients more information on how to do this stuff. I'd tell them about nutrition or diet in addition to the treatments. And she said, you need to maybe, give handouts or something. So Kellee comes in, and she is like a font of information about diet and nutrition in detail. That's not my style. And so she can help people kind of with the very practical part of it as well. Like if you're eating and you want to improve your diet, you may not want to start what a really good diet is. And she can help you kind of gradually make better choices so you end up with a really good diet. And it was an easy trip for you because of her knowledge of diet, nutrition, and And so she compliments me really well because I wasn't doing that,
Well, what I was going to say was, my parents and my wife's parents, my wife's parents grew up in Italy and my parents in Spain. And I remember my grandparents, whenever they were ill, they would go to the herbologist, right? So they go to, and I've been there, and they had there was a small place, but they got herbs all over the place. So you just tell them what what your ailments were, and they go there and they take 2 or 3 herbs and say, here, put it, makes your tea, and boom, and my grandfather never ever went to a doctor. It was unbelievable. He never went to a doctor and passed away. I think it was like 84, 85 years old, but it's so I guess my question to you is that part of what you do is try to find, that which nature has given us to help your body?
Oh, yeah. all drugs used to come from plants. They'd find the active ingredient, they'd tweak it, they'd put it in a drug.
Right.
When in fact, the plant material often worked at least as well or better and didn't have any downsides, didn't have any risks. That's not the way things are made. But no, we try to get people on track with the things that promote health in a natural manner, that have basically no risk. Well, very, very low risk. Very, very low risk. Yeah. Unlike drugs.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which, it makes perfect sense. Like you mentioned, sometimes I think people can be a little scared by, this is not FDA approved, but if you've ever bought like a probiotic jar or even like, what's the one, Airborne, you'll notice on the little Airborne thing it says this product is not FDA approved. It doesn't mean that taking Airborne is bad for you. It just means Airborne is vitamin C. It was in no one's interests to spend millions of dollars to get vitamin C FDA approved.
Right.
We could go down a rabbit hole of that.
Exactly. So, in other words, like there are lots of things out there that you can do for yourself, which say on the bottle, this is not FDA approved, but it doesn't mean the FDA looked at it and said, oh, this is bad, I have to give it the stamp of unapproval. It just means no, it wasn't in anybody's financial interest to go and spend the time and the money to get it patented and therefore FDA approved. So what would you say are some of the major treatments that people, it sounds like obviously chronic pain is a significant one. Mm-hmm. What are the typical, if there is such a thing,
I was going to say, if there's such a thing as a typical
treatments that you kind of specialize in or that people often come into you for?
Yeah, a lot of the treatments we do are intravenous. Ozone, ultraviolet blood irradiation, that's an extraordinary treatment. We do EDTA chelation that treats cardiovascular disease. We do high-dose vitamin C. That supports cancer patients in particular. We do some other IVs. Those are the main ones. I inject ozone and umbilical cord products like into joints to regenerate tissue. That's one of the nice things. Several of the treatments we do help people avoid surgeries. So it's not uncommon. Someone comes in, bone on bone, you need a knee replacement. They do a series of injections, they grow cartilage, and they not only don't need the surgery, they don't have pain or way reduced pain. People can also avoid stents and bypasses with the EDTA chelation.
So these are treatments. So the range of symptoms that people come in for is obviously pretty vast then.
We tend to see people who have gone through the traditional allopathic medical system and are sick of taking certain medications. They want to get off them. They're not seeing relief. Things continue to progress. And so we see people with a huge range, but oftentimes I feel like when they come to us, they're like, you're my last hope. They're really kind of looking for, I want something else. I know I need something else. And they've tried so many different things, and so they're a little bit more open to these non-FDA approved things.
So is it possible sometimes, you're given so many drugs for a particular, ailment that you may have, that the drugs themselves are then causing other issues in your body? And do you find that maybe sometimes it's like, well, you got to get rid of all these other drugs and focus on
drugs?
Medicines, I should say drugs.
Medicines, medications, tamper with your biochemistry to reduce a symptom or to change a number like your blood pressure.
Right.
And they don't fix it. That's why you're on that blood pressure medication the rest of your life.
For the rest of your life, exactly.
That tampering is not just what it does. That tampering affects other systems, always. And when you notice that, those are called side effects. Those are direct effects from the drug. And so our opinion is, try to get off the drugs if you can. And often you can. Also, my strong opinion is if you take a drug and it's not helping, don't take it. It's not doing you any good at all.
Exactly.
If your child has ADHD and you give him Ritalin and it doesn't do any better, don't keep him on it. It has no value.
Yeah. Well, I always find it interesting, like you watch television and have a commercial on some particular drug and say, this will help you with this, that, or that. And then later on it tells you, and you can have the following, right? and it takes about 20 minutes to tell you what the side effects may be, and one of them may be death. And I'm just like, wait a minute, so I can either live with whatever I have or I can die. It's like,
Yeah,
So-
that list that they talk about isn't something like headaches or something. It's these awful things.
Exactly.
Bone marrow suppression. What?
Well, we're one of the only countries, we're one of the few countries that actually allow advertisements for prescription drugs like that. So there's an interesting
Yeah,
happening
dynamic at
there.
play
The
there.
pharmaceutical industry spends $6 billion a year marketing.
Wow.
What does it make? I mean, that's why they spend all these billions to get the drug, right? They have to make sure it sells, otherwise they're not
Absolutely,
making
exactly.
their money back. They have to try to create demand in a sense.
Yeah.
Got a couple viewers watching. Linda Lentner, thanks for watching. Lucrecia Morales says, saludos amigos. Buenos dias, Lucrecia. Vanessa Parco has a great comment that I think kind of makes me think of a question. She says, I have family members who seek out the services that you're offering. They tell me that many top athletes, celebrities, and those with means to pay out of pocket use a lot of these treatments and plans. But she says what people have run into is, unfortunately, a lot of health insurance won't cover preventative measures that don't involve traditional medicine. Is that something you encounter?
Of course not. They don't pay for anything that I do. Why do people come in and pay out of pocket? Because these treatments work, and my patients aren't necessarily all that well off. Mm-hmm. It's an investment in their health. Mm-hmm. I've had people tell me, I didn't know if I should do this. It's, end up paying you a couple $1,000s over time, and then they come back and say, I would have mortgaged the house if I'd have known that I would get this result.
Yeah.
And so it makes all the difference in the world. This practice that I have is the fantasy that I had when I went to medical school of what being a doctor would be like. I thought I was going to learn some really good treatments and help people, and they would like the treatments. They would like, I thought it would be, and it wasn't. It was like, wait, this is what we do all day long? This is what we're doing? That's partly why I went into psychiatry, because it just seemed maybe more interesting. And,
Yeah, what I was going to say also is, it's funny how human nature is, right? Because if there's something wrong with your car, you take it to the mechanic, and the mechanic says, well, this is the problem, and it's going to cost you $800, $900, and you go, okay, let's do it, right? But it comes to our bodies like, well, if it's not covered by insurance, why should I do it? Well, because maybe the insurance, right, is not covering the right, what you really need. And if you're going to spend $1,000, $2,000 on you, what better than spending on your own body to make you feel better, right?
Once you have someone come in and they've been through all of that and their health is, that becomes the top concern. Yeah. And I will say, too, we do a lot of work. Obviously, we have a lot of things in-house that we can do, but a lot of the work that we do is educating so people know what they can do at home, and we try to help fit their budget, too, so they can find the most accessible way to get the treatments that they need. So that's a big part, because we don't want to turn anybody away. So we always do the best we can to give them the tools so that at least they can make better decisions in their everyday life, and then we've always got the resources, in-house for them to take advantage of.
That's what's important.
Let me say, too, about that non-FDA approved thing. To get FDA approved, those studies have to be huge and last a long time. All of my treatments have a lot of scientific validation. A couple of the treatments, for instance, ozone, it's been around over 100 years. The scientific database in Europe on ozone is bigger than any drug. So it's not like I'm winging it. Like,
exactly.
This is something I read online.
Exactly.
I'm going to try it on my patients. No, these are all well established. They're usually journals that are peer reviewed. The studies in them are not the size of the drug studies, of course, but there are studies and they're valid. And so it's not like, we're guessing. This is, and clinical outcomes over time tell you a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is funny because often those aren't used because you've got those big double-blind trials. But sometimes there's also something to be said for but this is what's actually happened when I'm actually.
They'll blow that off as anecdotal.
Exactly. Pat Cox, thanks for watching this morning. Rosalia Tordaro, thank you for joining us this morning. So what would you say is the typical process? So someone comes in, and they may have tried other methods to deal with what their issue is. They come in and say, okay, I need to, I need some help with this. What's typically the process of beginning to work with you?
We do a workup just like any physician does. We do a history, physical exam, get labs if necessary. Okay. And then we go after their problems with the treatments that we think are going to be most beneficial. Mm-hmm. Give them, it's not like there's one treatment for things. Yeah. Often there are several. So we give them options and so they can choose. Some, like the IVs, you got to come into the office, and if you're living in, far away, it's not so easy. But the treatments we offer aren't all that really available elsewhere. We routinely get patients in from Roanoke, Richmond, Northern Virginia.
Maryland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a couple guys still following me from South Carolina. I tell them, you can do this treatment closer to yourself. It's going to work.
But it's a trust factor.
Yeah, it's a
right?
trust
Like
factor, absolutely.
any-
They have confidence in you.
Anything where you're, especially you're working with something so close to you as your health,
Yeah.
there's an important trust factor there.
Well, one of the differences too, I think, from traditional allopathic, what they've maybe experienced too, is when he's talking about the intake, it's a lengthier intake process too. We spend a lot of time with our patients.
We do it together.
And so they've got both of us in the room we give them extensive notes, we're following up and giving them all the information, but we're digging into that history. And sometimes that's hugely therapeutic, I think, for people out there. They've been through all these different doctors who don't connect the dots, and then they're getting to say, some people will bring a list and go, when I was 7 to 7, we're like, maybe we don't need that, but we'll take it, it's helpful. And they kind of go and they get to unload all of that, and we can connect those dots for them, so it's a good deep dive.
Yeah.
That's the other area that Kellee's been sort of golden for this. She takes notes and sends people, a summary of everything. Because I'll typically go over 5 treatments, and the person's overwhelmed by the end. Because I explain the treatments, because I want them to know why I'm. And at some point, it's kind of like, okay, but then she'll take the notes, summarize everything, and then that works so much better. When you go home and you're not thinking, what did he say?
Yeah, you're able to kind of think about it a little more. And then
you can look into it too. You can then do your own search.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things, interesting, one of the things, and my wife always complains about this, and she's right, you go to a traditional doctor, right? You go in there, they're not really interested. What's your ailment? Okay, no problem. Yeah, take these pills or take this or whatever, and literally within 10 minutes, you're done, right? It's like no time, they don't have time for you to explain and talk a little about how you begin to feel, what makes you feel this way, how it comes about during the day, and then she used to have I forget what was in Carmel, but anyway, a naturopath.
A naturopath,
and she would take 1 hour, right, and just go with her, go over and try to figure out, what was the best path for her, right? And it made her feel good because somebody's listening, as opposed to, all right, I got it, no problem, here, take this to the pharmacy, we're good to go. And it's like, what is this? What am I taking? So I think
those
people
doctors
feel.
don't like doing that. That's the way the insurance company has created their world.
Right.
Your follow-up, I got 7 minutes. Don't ask me any questions. Certainly don't show me any internet articles. Just answer my questions. Let me write the prescription, and I'm off to my next 7-minute appointment.
Yeah.
And so they wouldn't do it that way if they had a choice, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I remember it, and this was in when I lived in California. I usually don't go for checkups. I don't like them. I don't believe them. And I said when I'm sick, I go to the doctor. My wife said, no, you got to go. So I go to the doctor. He goes, why are you here? I said, well, literally, I'm here because my wife sent me. So I do the whole checkup. He did everything, and then finally, I did all the blood work. I said, this guy hasn't called me back. So finally, I said, are the results in? Oh yeah, come visit the doctor. I go, and I had them send me. So I had read the whole thing, and I'm waiting. As the doctor says, you're in good shape. I said, oh, really? I said, did you see my cholesterol? Because I've had high cholesterol since I was like a little boy, right? And my whole family has it. But I just want to see what he said. He said, oh, well, let me see. I said, so you didn't read it? He goes, oh, I'm taking a look at it now. I said, well, what's the point? I come in here, I waste my time, because I was working there. I waste my time. I come in here, and you haven't looked at it yet. And it's like, yeah, I'll give you some pills. I said, I'll give you some pills. I said, no, I don't want pills. I just wanted to see if you had seen it or not, because every single doctor says, oh, your cholesterol.
That's another thing, too, that differentiates is that we look at labs, even we use these tools, but they look different to us. We look at them from what we call like functional levels. So if you want to explain further.
Well, medicine doesn't have a definition for health. And they don't really have protocols to promote health. They'll say, keep your weight down, watch your cholesterol. So a lot of labs have an optimum range.
Right.
Just because you're in the average range doesn't mean that's a good idea. So we check to see where you are in your normal range and let you know, no, you want to move this in the other direction much more to get the benefits of it.
Right.
So, we're about promoting health. And so you can optimize things. Like a lot of the nutritional requirements that conventional medicine uses is to avoid a disease. Like take enough vitamin C to avoid scurvy. Okay, that's 90 milligrams a day. There are extraordinary benefits from taking more vitamin C, but no thought about that. You don't have scurvy, you're fine. Yeah.
No, is it good to get some of these vitamins through what we eat as opposed to taking pills?
Oh, that's the way you get
that's
nutrition.
The way, okay. Yeah.
Supplementation is not the way to get nutrition. You can support and tweak and help things, and then you can get some things that you're not going to get in a good diet. There's no way you can eat enough vitamin D. No way to get an optimal level. Actually, the same thing with vitamin C and iodine, unless you eat seaweed. And magnesium. Magnesium has become so rare in foods now that's one that's kind of necessary to. So you can support things, but as far as basic nutrition, eat a good diet. A very nutritious diet.
No, is it? Oh, you have a question.
I have an audience question.
Oh, okay.
So
That's
Kevin
important.
Higgins watching today, and I think he's asking this because obviously you're past both in psychiatry as well. He says, what are your thoughts on the impact mental health has on physical health? I think in particular from the isolation people may have experienced, pandemic and the year afterwards. Well,
that isolation was pretty profound. I think it's pretty obvious in every area they've looked at, from the way children have performed in school to the rates of depression and suicide.
So I guess his question is there a significant impact that mental health then has on the physical health?
Oh, yeah. Oh, certainly. Well, stress in any form has detrimental effects in every system. Every system. So when you're under stress that you're not dealing with well, your immune system's not working as well. Everything, and certainly it affects.
It's not uncommon for us to have someone who's, they've been through everything, and they've got the diet, they're doing the treatments, doing all of these things, and we're going, what is the missing piece? What are we missing? And then you dig a little deeper and you go, oh my gosh, your nervous system, you're going through a lot, or you've been through a lot, or, we just need some work there. And that can be what's caused, no matter how well all the other ducks are in a row for their health, that can be a huge impacting piece.
Interesting. Provi Garcia Segarra, thank you. Muchísimas gracias from Spain, watching the show this morning, joining us. You had a question before.
Yeah, I forgot the question. But so my question was, one of the things that I always read now is that the nutrition that we get from the foods we eat is not what it used to be, maybe because of how it's grown, because of the chemicals that we put to grow. So would you typically recommend people to kind of lean more towards like an organic product if that was available to them?
Always. What a lot of people know about Roundup.
Yes.
It's sprayed on everything, and glyphosate is the thing in Roundup. What most people don't know is that glyphosate was first FDA approved as an antibiotic. So when you eat conventional food, you're eating antibiotics. And I think we all know at this point, the regular use of antibiotics has the damaging effects on our microbiome. So yes, same thing with animals. If you eat meat and dairy, if the animal's healthy, the products are good for you. But conventional animal, the way they're grown and fed, they're not healthy. And 80% of the antibiotics that are produced every year, and that's a ton, are given to the animals that we eat. So it's a constant onslaught to our microbiome from the antibiotics. So if you can eat cleaner, work on it. I mean, if you go out to eat, that's going to be hard.
Sure.
And organic regulations get softer and softer.
Really?
To help. To help
more big companies become. I mean, we saw it in California even. I mean, by the time Earthbound Farms, they had the little stand, but then one day we're driving in California and you look and you see this massive industrial complex and we're like, what the heck is that? And you're Earthbound Organic Farms, right? As you're saying, it wasn't really the little stand that you thought it was. It was actually a very large.
Yeah.
You can label your food organic if it's 90% of it is organic. And if it's made with organic ingredients, 70% needs to be organic. And so, if you're a big outfit like that, you take advantage of that.
Sure.
You got 90%, and you add the 10% conventional because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
And,
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, eat clean if you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Keep growing my vegetables then.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
You said it.
So, this has been just so eye-opening, and really, I've learned a lot. If people are interested in okay, I want to find out more. I want to get in touch. What's the best way to find you guys and get in touch with your industry, your practice?
Well, you can give us a call. I don't have our number memorized, so we'll make
I
sure.
do.
Oh, you do?
434-956-4100.
There you go. And you can also check out our website, www.cimcville.com.
Oh.
We just updated that. So.
Very easy.
CIMC is for Castro Integrated Medicine.
Yep,
Yes.
CIMCville.com.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Dr. Ed, Kellee, it's been such a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you
It's been
so much for
wonderful.
coming
Yeah.
on.
It's great to know.
It's always nice when somebody's interested in learning a little more about.
Oh, this is fabulous.
Yeah.
I mean,
It is. So we really
this is the way
appreciate
medicine
your
should be.
having
To be honest, I mean, this is the way it should be first. When you don't feel well, go through a traditionals. Try to figure out how to make yourself better in a traditional way, right? And granted, I mean, there are times where there's no doubt about it. You're going to need the regular, doctors and surgeries and things of that sort. And I understand
And then
that.
once
but-
you're better, how to stay better.
Yeah, exactly. But staying healthy is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you both
Stress
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Take care.
Muchas gracias. Buen día.
Muchas gracias. You see, this is why we just love this show
No, it's true.
so
and-
much.
and-
Just learn.
So you and obviously Mommy has always been on organics ever since you guys were a little
yeah,
kid,
I
right?
remember.
And so you read about it and you learn things, and that when especially like you go to Spain or you go to Italy, and the food that you eat, it tastes wonderful, it tastes great, right? And you say, why is it that this tastes so different than in America? And it's because here we try to produce so much so fast that sometimes the quality that we get isn't quite the same, right?
Absolutely.
And let's be honest, that's what you put into your body. Your body then produces whatever it produces based on what the intake is, and sometimes it's not so good,
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
if I think more and more people, if they little by little wake up to the fact that what you put into your body truly is so
important. It does
important.
matter.
It does matter.
It does
And maybe when you're young, you feel like you're invincible, but then all of a sudden you get into later ages in life, and it's like you got this ailment or that ailment or this happening, and you see, it's based on what you.
Even last week, Ben from Greenbrook Farms, when our guest last week,
Oh, yeah.
he had said, remember, he had read about Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm.
Oh, right.
And of course, and if you read Joel Salatin at Polyface Farm, right, you realize what has happened to the food that we
Exactly.
consume.
Exactly.
Right? And the lack of quality
Yeah.
that is there. And and how important it is what you put into yourself. I mean, it makes, what Dr. Castro just said, it makes complete sense, right? If you're eating an unhealthy cow,
Yeah.
is its meat going to be very good for you? Probably not.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which makes sense. Did want to read. It's a shame. Right after we close the interview, Linda Lettner writes, "Dr. Castro's care helped me become functional again after struggling with chronic illness for years. I'm so grateful. It was worth the travel and the money. Thank you, Dr. Castro." So got some people tuning in that have benefited from
That's
there.
wonderful.
Randy
That's
O'Neill, thank you for watching the show this morning as well. Appreciate everyone who's tuned in so far this morning.
No, it's great. I mean, this is great. Like I said, I remember, Jan going in California, and how she felt was so much better, after going to the homeopathic one, and
I've seen it myself. It's true. You don't go to the chiropractor, right? That's one of the big things I do. You go to the chiropractor, right? And you sit there and you're like, $48 for 5 minutes, right? That's not, my health insurance won't cover it.
right.
But I feel you go
amazing,
back,
yeah.
you feel good. Your back
Yeah.
is better. You're functioning better. So it's like, why would I not pay? Why would I sit there and say, I'd rather save the $48 and be miserable? Well,
Or just take, constantly take, whatever, aspirins or something, because I got to pay.
Yeah, by the time you buy constant Tylenols, I mean, you buy a bottle of Tylenol,
And
it
it's
costs
not good for you.
$30.
I mean, it's not good for you. I mean, granted, once in a blue moon, you take an aspirin or an Advil or whatever it may be. That's fine, but you don't want to be living on things of that sort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's just the importance of wellness.
Eduardo
And
Castro.
speaking of wellness,
Yeah.
financial wellness.
Financial wellness is so
It's
important.
something we're actually January
the idea-
was financial wellness month. I discovered. Dr.
was last
Elizabeth Urpí. Yeah, Dr. Elizabeth Urpí had reminded me that last month was financial wellness.
I'll have to remember that next year.
I'll have to remember that next year.
But you know what's interesting? So, and you know, Dr. Eduardo Castro mentioned this, right? And so did Kellee. Stress, you know, and we don't. You know, the problem with stress is that you don't really see how it impacts you, right?
Yeah.
But little by little, it tears you apart one way or another, right? There's always something going on, and we don't know how it works. I don't know how it works, but the more stressed you are over time, that does have something to do with how you feel, right? And so one of the things that is important is, you know, how do I avoid being stressful about my finances, right? And so
Finance is a major source.
Yeah.
I think there's been studies that it's one of the major sources of stress.
Well, absolutely, and you can understand, you know, whether we like it or not. I mean, we go to work to earn a living, right, so that we can provide for ourselves and hopefully someday also provide for our retirement, right? So there's a whole stress level there of, you know, especially if you have a family, you have kids. Do I send them to college? Can I afford to send them to college? Do I let them take out a loan? That loan is going to be very painful for them in the future. So all these decisions are constantly being made by parents, right? And so from a perspective of the finances, you know, it's always good, just like when you go to a doctor for a checkup and just see how you are, how you're feeling, how things are going. It's probably not a bad idea to kind of maybe approach sometimes a financial advisor and say, you know, I just want to see how I'm doing. Am I going in the right direction? Am I doing the right things? Am I budgeting properly? You know, and so to a certain respect, and we see that happen, you know, all the time, right? And it's good, especially, you know, younger people sometimes feel like, I don't have enough money. It's not about having enough money. It's about, you know, making sure that, you know, you're aligning yourself, you're doing what's best for you, your family, and your retirement, right? To make sure that over time, those funds that you have, your savings you have, are growing properly, and you can have some peace of mind. I'm not saying
how often is it just? It's literally the peace of mind. It's literally saying, okay, it's not as though I need to make major changes in my financial life, but I now have a plan. I know that what I'm doing will lead me on the right track, and if I keep doing it, I know that even in the worst case scenario, I'm in good shape, and that brings so much peace of mind to people.
We should all time. And I remember last year, we had a client whose children paid for the financial plan so that their mother would feel good, right? And that was beautiful. I said, that's so wonderful, because they realized how stressful she constantly was about her finances. Can she retire? Can she not retire? And it was like, you need to do a financial plan to see when you can retire, and you know how soon you can retire. And what the retirement means, and
exactly.
it's that. I mean, so that's the wellness we provide.
That's the financial wellness. You know,
exactly.
And on that topic, obviously, we like to. One of the things that I know is so hard on that topic is that people there's always changing rules, changing regulations. You know, we've talked about the last couple of weeks. You know, this time of year particularly,
yes,
we get
absolutely.
all these articles. You're going to get hit with this RMD. You're going to get hit with this tax. Do this, change this. 5 tips for the year that you have to do, right?
Exactly.
And you're sitting there reading these, 5 tips. And of course, you get 5 tips from Fidelity, 5 tips from Schwab, 5 tips from
Vanguard,
TD Ameritrade, 5 tips from Vanguard, right? And before you know it, I got 25 tips. Yeah. Which one do I do?
Wait a minute, one said to do this, one said to do that.
Yeah.
They're kind of contradictory.
Exactly. This guy said to do a Roth conversion, but this side said don't do a Roth conversion. What do I do? So it's sometimes helpful to kind of simplify it and say, okay, what are the things that you need to look at and be aware of that are changing in 2024?
Exactly. And so, one of the things that I wanted to, mention to you, talk about was the fact that, the amount that you can save in your IRA and your simple plans or your 401ks have changed. And so it's good for people to know that, because I'm not sure how many people follow that, but certainly.
Well, and a lot of people may not be used to it. Let's face it. I mean, what happens is a lot of the Roth IRA, simple IRA, 401k, a lot of these maximums that you can put in, they change depending on inflation. So let's face it, for most of the 2010s, there was maybe 1 or 2 times that it changed. Many years it was the same as the previous year. It's really been the last few years that it has gone up, I think, twice in a row now.
Correct. Yeah.
So people may not be used to it actually changing. I mean, so what do you mean the maximum Roth IRA limit can change? Well, it can change. It just needs, there needs to be a cost of living adjustment, and that doesn't always happen because it only does it a little bit at a time. It's not like Social Security where whatever inflation was or whatever their inflation number that they used for that was, that's what Social Security is going to change. With IRAs, it either changes by 500 or it doesn't change. So it's kind of an all or nothing. And so people may not be used to it changing.
Yeah. And the other thing is the catch-up, right? Because I think if you're 50 and over, how many situations you have a family where, they've struggled to save because, they had children, they had the expenses with the children, whatever it may be. And finally, they're in their early 50s, and it's like, okay, I now need to start saving for my retirement. I'm doing the best I can to maximize. And so recognize that once you're 50 and over, there are catch-ups, right? Even the IRA, like this year, you can put $7,000 away into an IRA or Roth, right? But the catch-up is another $1,000.
It's another $1,000.
Right?
So you can put 8 if you're over 50.
Exactly. So that's important because that can benefit a lot of people.
And some of them are very significant. So I know, for instance, the IRA catch-up is $1,000.
Right.
The simple IRA, if you have a business plan, right, is $3,500.
That's right.
Is that catch-up?
Yeah.
So I mean, some of these
and the 401k is 7,500.
Even higher, yeah, 7,500.
Yeah, so all that, and there's one thing, most people won't fall into this particular kind of, and I don't want to call it a trap because it's probably not a trap, but something to think about. A lot of companies, as you know, match. Let's say they match 4% of your salary as long as you put that money into a 401k, right? What happens is there's a lot of people that say, okay, I want to maximize my IRA this year, and how much can I put away? $23,000. Okay, so I'm going to take 25% of my salary because I want to maximize it as soon as possible. So by the time June comes along, boom, they hit the $23,000. The challenge there is that you got to pay attention to your 401k and the language in there, because many times the company will only match as long as you're matching. So the minute you stop in your paycheck, they no longer match. So you only get, let's say it's June, you've only gotten 2% because their 4% is based on your salary.
So then you put 0 for the rest.
That's right, for the rest.
Year.
You're not getting the rest of the 2%. So the key is to, if you're one of those, be aware, look at the language of the 401k and make sure that that's not the case, that they'll continue to
Well, in other
contribute.
words, what you need to make sure is that basically that they're matching, for instance, 2% of your annual salary based on your annual contributions. Not that it's 2%, but it has to be continued every single paycheck.
Right, exactly, yeah. Exactly. So that's what's important, because that has happened to many, many people. It was like, wait a minute, I didn't get my other 2% or 1% or 0.5%, whatever it may be, because I maximized before the end of the year. So you yourself can say, okay, if this is my salary, if I want to put $23,000 away, take that, divide it by the 12 months, and know how much percentage you need to pay per paycheck. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
I would say another thing for always people to be aware of is ask if you were interested in a Roth IRA. That's best for you. Ask if there's a Roth 401k options. It's becoming increasingly common that there are Roth 401k options if you're in a company. So you can, and that allows you to put. Just normally a Roth IRA, you're matched out at $7,000 now, right? You can do more than $7,000 in a Roth 401k.
Right.
The key thing to keep in mind is that if you do a Roth 401k, the match is not also Roth. So if you do a Roth 401k, you're going to end up with 2 accounts. You're going to end up with one piece that is your
Oh well,
two. One piece which is your Roth contributions, in other words, the part that's been taken out of your paycheck. But what happens is that's not tax deductible on your part. But then the company match is not taxable. It comes straight out of the company. So what happens is that match can't be Roth. It can't be post-tax because the government's like, that money never got taxed. Going in, it needs to be taxed coming out. So what you end up with is you have your Roth 401k, but then you have your match, which is basically in a normal 401k tax status. So you end up with 2 different pieces. And it's important to know that because you're going to have 2 different accounts. And then when you move them over in retirement or hit retirement, you want to know which one to take money out of
Yeah, and you can have three. What I was going to say is you can actually have three, because think about it. If you're, depending on your salary,
you might do some Roth,
you might do some Roth, yeah, because
traditional-
obviously there's a tax advantage,
Yep.
right? So you might say, yeah, I'll take this tax advantage because it pushes me into the lower tax bracket,
And
but
then
the
start
balance
doing
up into a Roth. So now you got three. Your tradition, your 401k, that is an IRA. Your 401k, that's a Roth. And the company.
And the match for the Roth portion.
So sometimes you'll see there's three, and you got to remember that, because when you pull them, they are different. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to always ask, if you ever do a rollover, make sure that you're going pre-tax to pre-tax,
Post-tax
Roth to Roth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to get hit with an unpleasant tax bill.
Yeah, and that's important. And let's face it. I mean, the Roth account has been, I think, is a blessing, especially. We've always
For
said
the
it
average
for
person.
young
young
people that
people.
just starting. I mean, that's probably the best way, because the chances of you starting and really needing the tax benefit is probably low. So you might as well put into a Roth, right? That advantage is tremendous, because one, it can serve as an emergency fund. It can serve as a fund that eventually you can use to buy a house. It can serve as a fund for you if you have children eventually and you want to send them to college. So there's so many options for that Roth account. And if you don't ever use them for anything like that, you use them at retirement. And like we said many times, once you pull the money out of a Roth at retirement, it's not taxable.
Exactly.
So it grows tax-free. It's not taxable. It's a great vehicle.
Well, and the beauty is, like you said, the contributions are never taxable.
Right.
What you put into the Roth is never taxable when you take it out.
Yes.
The earnings are, if you're not yet 59 and a half.
Correct.
Right, but not the contribution. So it is really the ultimate form, especially because obviously we've talked many times about the homeownership challenges among younger people. How hard it is to actually save that down payment. You have a vehicle here whereby you can save for a down payment, and basically when the time comes and you need the down payment and you have to pull out your contributions, you've still got a nice little chunk in there that's for retirement. You can even tap 10% of the chunk, but if you don't want to tap any of your earnings, you have a nice chunk that now at least in that time period where you were saving for a down payment, you received tax-free growth.
Exactly.
In an account that now will continue to be tax-free growth. So instead of in other words, if you saved $30,000 for a down payment, and let's say you managed to, over a 10-year period, you got 10% on that, you got $3,000, right? Well, at least now, instead of when you pull out the $30,000 to put your down payment, you still got $3,000 that is going towards your retirement. You didn't go from $30,000 to nothing. You now have actually some kind of piece that can continue to grow for your retirement.
For your time, that's right.
So it's a beautiful tool to say, okay, I'm going to save for a down payment, but this saving for a down payment will also kind of pay dividends towards my retirement. I don't have to choose between down payment or retirement. With a Roth, you can kind of do a little bit of both.
Absolutely. And like you said, I mean, you put that money that's not in a Roth, and the drag because of taxes is always there, right?
Exactly.
While in a Roth, that drag is not there, and it just grows so much faster over time. And that's the key. The key is when you think of, it's the reinvestment of interest, right, that really makes those funds grow, right? And so when you're able to reinvest 100% of what you're earning back into the market, as opposed to 70% or 80%. Over time, it's just dramatic. I mean, you look at the charts; it's just incredible.
The key to remember is the tax drag is greater than your tax rate, because what happens is, let's say you're in a 15% tax bracket, right? You earn $100, 15 goes to government, 85 gets reinvested. The 85 earns interest. 15% goes to government, 85% gets reinvested. So when you calculate it over a 20-year period, the tax drag isn't 15%.
No,
it's much greater than 15%.
It's compounded.
Because
it's also compounded. The tax drag is compounded.
Exactly. Yes. It's 15% compounded because you lost out on the 15% that went to the government, but you also lost out on what that 15% could have grown the next year.
Right.
So it's not that you sit there and say, oh man, tax drag is 15%. No, tax drag is whatever your tax rate is compounded over however many years the drag is occurring. So
it's like inflation when people say, well, at least inflation is down to 3%. I said, yeah, but 3% is compounding on the fact that you had 9% inflation, 7% inflation. So all that is being compounded by the 3%.
Well, I mean, when
it's
you
not
add
like
it all
it's
up,
9% and then it disappears.
Yeah.
It goes back to 0 and then we start again at 3.
Well, and you can see it when you go and look online and see what was $1 in 29. In other words, what was $1 in 2019 money? So $1 today, how much was that in 2019 money? It's not, the dollar today isn't 4% less because the current inflation rate is 4%. It's like almost 20% less because you had 9, compounded 7, compounded 4.
Exactly.
So by the time you go back, if you look at what $1 today was worth in 2019 money, $1 a day is worth way less, and it's not 4% less. It's a lot less.
It's a lot less, exactly. Yeah. So that's the issue. That's the challenges of numbers when they're compounding forward. That's why inflation, when you run financial plans, inflation is the greatest enemy to every financial plan. Right? That and expenses. But expenses you can control.
Yep.
Expenses you can control. But inflation, you have no control.
No control.
And when it gets out of hand, all of a sudden your financial plan says, you're not looking so good anymore.
Exactly. Well, that's why it's also important to keep in mind, we talked about this. Sometimes people will make fun of the small changes that you can make. So whenever people say, you can save $30,000 if you skip the cup of coffee over 50 years, right? And people will say, well, that's nothing over 50 years. But that assumes that the $5 cup of coffee is $5 every single week for 30 years. But we all know that's not how it works.
That's right.
And when you do compound inflation, that $5 cup of coffee 30 years from now may well be $10, the way inflation works. I mean, inflation only...
Well, let's be honest. I used to buy that pumpkin latte thing.
Yeah, the pumpkin spice latte.
Which I don't buy anymore. But however... I used to spend $2.50. Now it's over $5. So
it's almost one of them was in the airport was 7.
So it's like you look and you go, wow. I mean, so if you did that every day, right? I mean, you went from 2 to 5 to possibly 7. That's just a lot of money.
In other words, like you may sit there and say $30,000 in future money is not a huge amount, but the future cup of coffee isn't $5. The future cup of coffee is probably 30 years from now. Even if you just had 3% inflation, a future cup of coffee is $10.
It's more than that.
It's more than that. It's more. In other words, it's at least $10, and which is hard to wrap your mind around.
Exactly.
Right? You have to kind of. Sometimes the way you can tell people is if you go backwards, right? You tell them that in 1940 an apple was 50 cents, and now you go in the store and apple's $3. They're like, "Whoa, that's it." How on earth?
So think about this. So what year was this? So 1967, 1968, right? I used to buy a loaf of bread every day before my parents came home. They used to give me the money, 25 cents. And we're talking about a baguette, right? Every baguette's over $3 today.
Exactly.
So 25 cents to $3 since 1967.
So it's 4 times 3, so 12 times. It's basically 12.
Yeah. So I mean. And that's a small, right? 25 cents to $3.
And remember, 12 times is what, 1,200%?
Yeah, so it's like... Yeah.
In other words, where prices will be in 30 years is almost impossibly large to fathom. It's why sometimes people get a little nervous, right? If you do a financial plan, and a lot of younger clients, we do the financial plan, right? And you do the 30-year projection, and they're like, how are my expenses $2 million a year in 30 years? And it's not that you're spending too much money now, it's just that when you inflate over 30 years, your final number of expenses is $2 million. Obviously, your salary is going to be much larger as well. Right. But the point is that your final expenses look much larger. So little changes actually can have an impact because you have to account for that change being inflated over time.
Exactly.
And it doesn't mean to discount big changes, right? In other words, if you skip the $5 cup of coffee every day, but then you make a big mistake on your mortgage and you get some kind of APR that jacks you, adjustable rate or adjustable rate mortgage arm that jacks up to 10% interest, right? That mistake is going to cost you way more than the $5 of coffee. So it doesn't mean that you don't need to still be careful about the big things. But it does go to show you that because of the way inflation works, small changes in your expenses, because like you said, we can't control inflation, but you can control, in other words, if you are seeing massive inflation and you're able to take your expenses from $90,000 a year to $85,000 a year, you may sit there and say, that's $5,000, that's nothing. Yeah, but that $5,000 inflated over 30 years is going to make a big impact on how long your money lasts.
And not only that, you have to think of it is that $5,000 going to your savings, which means it's growing.
It's growing, exactly. So, I mean, sometimes making that, we've seen in the financial plans.
Oh, absolutely.
You make a small change like that in your current expenses, and it has a huge impact on
Over
future
time.
expenses, because that $5,000 is going to be $50,000 in 30 years. And so then it does become a large number.
It becomes, a very large number. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's two sides to every coin. I mean, there's one guy that I always read, he says, don't sweat the small stuff. It's the big stuff that's a killer. But I think it's a balance. I mean, because obviously, if you want a cup of coffee or you want a latte or whatever.
Don't be miserable.
Yeah, you can't be miserable and say, I can't do it because I want to retire when I'm 63 or 61.
I said the guy we read that he retired at 40, right? But he spent his 20s eating Chef Boyardee cans and living in a 500 square foot apartment in Manhattan.
It can't be a lot of fun.
That doesn't sound very pleasant.
Exactly. So, and I always tell people you have to live for the day, right? And yes, plan for the future. But you can't be miserable today because you don't know what's coming in the future. So you must it's a balance. Live for today. Be cognizant of the fact that, yes, you also may be living in the future and you want to live just as well then as you do today.
And I would say it's also the habitual things versus the things you enjoy a few times a year.
Exactly.
In other words, the one time, the once a month or once a week you get a $5 coffee is not going to kill you.
Exactly.
If you have a $5 coffee every single day.
Yeah,
Just like if you go out to eat, right? There's no reason you can't go out to eat and spend so now it's like $200 if your family of four goes out to eat, right? Spend $200 going out to eat, right? We're not saying your financial advisors, don't do that because it's $200 a month and that's. But if you're going out to eat twice a week and spending $400 every week on going out, then you probably need to make a change. So in other words, it's the things we do habitually.
Yeah.
I mean, to relate it back to health, right? If you eat an Oreo cookie, if you buy a box of Oreos in the summer and then eat it, is that going to suddenly, destroy your health? No. If you eat a box of Oreos every single week, your health is probably going to suffer. In other words, what you do habitually has a stronger impact than what you may do every once in a while.
Exactly. Yeah. It's those little things. It's that you have to step back and say, wait a minute. So I get up in the morning, I go and I buy myself a bagel and a coffee every day. Well, maybe I should buy the bagels in the store and coffee and make it home. And I guarantee you that over time you say that's just a big savings, right? And maybe you enjoy it at home as opposed to just boom going out and buying it somewhere, right? And maybe not. But again, everybody's different. But those are the little things that sometimes you say, will that impact me in the future? And that's what we do. We say yes, no. Here's other things that you can do.
Exactly.
That's important.
Exactly. Particularly in tight times, right? In tight times, if it's being funded by credit cards, you really need to pay attention to the impact of what you're spending.
Yeah. That's a big problem. The credit card is a big problem, and people tapping into their savings. Savings is a big problem.
Buy now, pay later.
Yeah.
Starting to hit people. So, a lot to think about. But I think hopefully we've helped a couple people out with just some tips, things to think about, things to ask your financial advisor about, or your accountant. Be surprised how many people don't ask their CPAs, hey, can I put $5,000 into a Roth before April 15th?
Yeah.
Just a lot of times, if you have a good CPA, they'll mention it. But a lot of times, your basic tax preparers are not going to be saying, hey, have you thought about, especially this time of year, right? They're so swamped. Your tax preparer is not going to be like, hey, have you thought about putting $5,000 into a Roth?
You could save $2,000 by putting $7,000 in an IRA.
Yeah.
They're not running those numbers.
But you can ask them and say, hey, what happens if I put $7,000 in my IRA before April 15th?
Yeah.
And then they'll tell you. So there you go. There you have it.
Little tips.
Little tips.
Wellness tips to stay financially well. Healthy, financially healthy.
Exactly. So it's been a great show. Got another great next. In fact, speaking of wellness, next week's guest, purely coincidental, I promise. Shannon Miller from 360 Health and Wellness.
Okay.
So the wellness theme shall continue.
So we went from wellness in January on finances into wellness for your body in February. Which is good because you know how many people start the new year and it's like, I need to exercise, I need to diet, I need to lose weight, whatever. Right? And you know what? Sometimes it's good to remind them, you know, it doesn't have to be difficult. You know, you don't have to make your life miserable by going on a diet.
And you don't have to fix it all in 1 month.
You know, exactly. It's little by little, you need to change some of your habits and you see over time how, you know, you improve your quality of life.
Exactly. This has been a great show.
Yeah.
Love being on here with you.
Same here.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks, really. I really appreciate everyone that reached out, commented today. Kevin Higgins, thank you very much. Vanessa Parto, thanks so much for your comment. Linda Lentner, thanks so much for your comment. Really appreciate them all. Thanks everyone who tuned in. Especially we had some people, Rosalia Trodaro from New York, tuning in, or Miami, one or the other. Provi Garcia Serrara from Spain, muchas gracias. Monica Miller from Montana. So we had the whole distance.
A whole globe watching.
So really appreciate everyone who tuned in. We look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you, Judah, behind the camera, always making us look good. Thank you, Emergent Financial Services, Castle Hill Cider, Matthias Yohn Realty, Craddock, Sirius Insurance. We look forward to seeing everyone next week.
Absolutely.
Stay warm. Hopefully we still get some sunny weather in the interim. But until that time, as we like to close it out on the show, hasta mañana.